Ready? Over here, Mr. Valen. You ready? Yes. You good? Okay. Go ahead and raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to provide is true and accurate? Yes. Okay. Mr. Jorde.
All right. Did we save the best for last? That's what I want to know.
We'll see.
All right.
Okay.
Please state your name.
Dennis Valen.
And Mr. Valen, you own land in Emmett County, two parcels that are currently being targeted by the proposed Summit Hazardous Pipeline. Is that right?
Yes.
And we heard from your son, and Matt, and he's the tenant on those parcels?
Yes, he had.
In preparation for today, sir, you have prepared what's called pre-filed testimony, written question and answers, as well as a series of attachments and exhibits. Is that correct?
Yes.
And rather than going through all of those questions at this time, if we were to do that, would the answers you give here today be substantially similar to those you provided in writing?
Yes, it would be.
And can you think of any material corrections that need to be made to your written testimony?
No.
Can you think of any necessary updates based on facts or circumstances since the time of your pre-filed testimony that you believe are necessary for the board to understand?
Yes, I have several.
Okay, let's start with the first one, please.
Since turning in the testimony, I was able to find a professor from Drake University to come and look at my fin that is associated, the pipeline is not going through the fin, but it's very close. And I invited him out, and he observed it, looked it over, and I believe his letter is Exhibit 600.
Okay.
If we can draw that up.
And what I'm going to do, sir, I'm going to offer those exhibits in a moment. If you can maybe kind of highlight the updates,
Sure.
Just generally.
I guess he looked it over and was really excited about it. He supports my opposition to the pipeline because of the danger of the fin being located that close, because fins are water fed, water flows underground and creates them, and that makes certain vegetation that you don't find anywhere else except in a fin. And he's very well qualified. He's wrote over 375 books. He's had 40 years of field and research experience in Iowa, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Illinois, and Missouri. He was able to look up and see that I think in 1992 they did a survey and determined that this fin is over 8,000 years old, and that it is extremely rare. It's the fourth oldest fin in Iowa, and his letter explains it quite well.
So let me just stop you there for a second, because I'll offer the letter. If it doesn't come in, then we'll talk more about it in detail, but because it might come in, let me just ask you, FEN, you're referencing FEN, capital F-E-N, correct?
Yes.
And that's just explain just in a sentence what that is.
Well, it's a natural thing that I've got a quick note here to say it more accurately. A fin is a wetland created by groundwater flow that has specific chemical properties in the water. This specific water flow enables rare plants, some now endangered, to live. The fins and the unique plants within them are dependent on groundwater flow, and a disruption of Earth could impact the viability of the fins. Fins have undergone water sources which can result in a sensitive area being much larger than the visible fin. In other words, he's saying just because the pipeline's not going directly through this doesn't mean that it wouldn't be harmed.
Okay, and so let me kind of sum up if I can. So basically, since the time of your pre-filed testimony, you've discovered the sensitivity and the rarity or uniqueness of this environmental feature, and you have grave concern of it being disturbed or destroyed. Is that a fair summary?
Yes.
All right.
And I was unable to get him to come because they moved the timeline up from October to August. And so another note that he puts in here is the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources recommends pipeline projects within Minnesota, which is, this is a half mile from Minnesota, evaluates impacts to the fins within 5 miles of a pipeline project.
Okay.
So the clusters of fins in Emmett County are all within the recommended 5 miles, even though it's a Minnesota law, but that's whatever. So
Okay, so let's do this. Why don't I offer, sir, your pre-filed testimony and exhibits first, and then I'm going to offer your hearing exhibits. So we would offer exhibits 163 through 176, which is Mr. Valen's pre-filed testimony plus attachments.
No objection. With no objections, the board will admit.
And we would also offer into evidence the exhibit 600, which is the letter regarding this environmental feature that Mr. Valen is referencing.
Also no objection. With no objection, the board will admit and give it the way due.
We would offer exhibit 601, which is information related to the water trail and another environmental feature on Mr. Valen's property.
And no objection. Also admitted.
Thank you. And then next, there's a second water trail erosion map. Again, environmental feature information relative to the pipeline, and that's exhibit 639.
No objection.
And
Also
then,
admitted.
sorry, thank you. And then 640 is more of the conservation and information related to the FEN, F-E-N, on Mr. Valen's property. We'd offer that.
No objection. Also admitted.
Thank you. And then lastly, but not least, exhibit 653 is the Emmett County Ordinance setback map that is relevant to Mr. Valen's property.
No objection. So admitted.
So, Mr. Valen, what we've done now, we've admitted into evidence, and these documents are available for discussion and cross-examination and board review. So, beyond all that information, which can now be discussed, did you have anything that was an additional update that isn't included in the information that's now in the record?
no, I think that
Covers it?
covers it.
Very good. With that, sir, I'm going to tender you for cross-examination.
Mr. Taylor. Thank you. Mr. Valen, I'm Wally Taylor. I represent the Sierra Club. We looked at a KMZ file when your son was testifying, and it looks like your property is just to the north of his. Is that correct?
Yes.
And your property borders the Iowa-Minnesota border?
Yes.
Okay. And according to your pre-filed testimony, you have some drainage tile on your property?
Yes.
And you're concerned about whether the tile will be damaged and not repaired. Are you aware that Summit has said that they would bury their pipeline at least 2 feet below your drainage tile so it won't be damaged?
I don't think that last part about it won't be damaged would be accurate. When you,
Mr. Valen, can you just make sure you're speaking into the microphone? Go ahead and move that around. We just want to make sure we can hear you.
a little closer.
Yeah, okay. Move it wherever you like.
Okay. Is that better? Okay. When I guess I run a backhoe business for 25 years, repaired tile, buried foundations, did that kind of work. Our family also owns a tile plow. So when it comes to tile repair, I have a little bit of knowledge there.
Good. So why do you think that Summit would not be able to correctly install the pipeline below your tile and not damage it?
Well, if you're going to take an excavator and dig through my tile and go 2 foot deeper, how are you not going to damage it?
Did you ever discuss that with Summit, given your expertise?
Well, I guess the land agent that I only talked to twice, and both times was a lady that was from Oklahoma, and she was delivering the easements to me to sign. And the first time I quizzed her quite a bit on the project, and then I told her that I needed to send this to my attorney, and of course she was wanting me to sign it right then. But anyway, and then the second time, I discussed the tile and where they were going to go for sure, and things on that order. And then the second time, she actually tracked me down out in the field. I'm driving across the field, tracked me down, and handed me 2 more easements. One, a surface easement, and they're going to put a valve now on my property. So I just kind of surmised that the first time around, if we sign this easement, then they were going to throw these other 2 in. And I didn't sign any easement, but so they're putting a valve in now, and a road, and a building, and they're going to run electricity to the building. And they're going to dig through all the pattern tile on the farm, which my son kind of discussed. And there's no way that you're going to get that bottom solid enough to make the tile work.
So if I'm correct, and from what I've been hearing from other witnesses as well,
Right.
If you bury this pipeline below the drainage tile,
Okay.
there's just not enough support for the drainage tile, and it's going to sink and therefore perhaps break.
Well, right, correct. And when you've got that little of fall on your tile, and when you dig, you've got plastic tile, you've got cement tile, you've got clay tile. Well, the old tile before plastic came along was about 1 foot long. Some of the cement ones are 2 foot long, okay? So they're set in there, and they have 1/8 of an inch clearance for the water to go in. They're solid, not like the plastic that has lots of holes for the water to come in, okay? So that has to set very carefully to be 1/8 of an inch, because if you get too much, it's going to just fill with dirt. And so how you're going to be able to repair them, now they can try and shove a piece of plastic in there, and not put the original size tile in there. But if your bottom's not solid, whenever you're repairing a tile, you dig in, and you're very careful. When you get close to it, you actually get down, dig by hand, okay, and there's a tile, so you don't disturb that bottom. Then you roll out whatever the problem is. This last 2 years ago, we had a coon crawl in there and die, and plug the tile. You couldn't plug it any tighter, and it wasn't working. You roll that out, take the coon out, put the tile back in. But we didn't disturb the bottom. when they come with this big excavator, their job is putting in pipeline. And they put in as much pipeline, they bid the job, we're putting in pipeline. Our tile deal is not anything of ours. That's a separate company that's doing that. And that's going to create a real problem if you do have a problem, because all you're going to have push back and forth. Well, it was the tile didn't repair it right. The pipeline company, you complain to them. They're going to blame them, or they're just push it back and forth, and you'll never be able to get it fixed correctly. Plus, in their easement, they're saying that it's they're going to repair it. They didn't say they're going to fix it. They're going to repair it. Well, that's kind of like a car body shop saying we're going to fix your car with a metal fender, but if you're going to repair it, we're going to put some Bondo in here, and then it's going to, the difference. There's a difference between fixing it and repairing it.
Did you ever talk with anybody from Summit about your concerns about the tile and to get a firm idea of what they claim they would do?
Well, of course, they're just going to fix it and it'll all be fine. That's their pat answer, and I discussed that the first time when the land agent came and first presented the first easement to me. We discussed that, but at that time, I guess I wasn't aware that they're going to dig 2 feet down and go under, and go underneath my tile, which they are going a depth where you're going to hit everyone. So it's anyway.
Can we bring up the KMZ file? Yep. I think your son testified that the portion of your property on the north end by the Minnesota-Iowa line is not tilled, or there's no tillage there. Is that correct?
Not sure. What was that again? Where do you mean?
Well,
I can point, I guess.
Yeah. Up where the road curves.
Pushing the wrong button.
There we go.
Okay.
Up toward the north part.
What he was referring to right here, there's like a 6-inch culvert under the road. This is a blacktop road. And there's a lot of surface water that comes because it comes from this big hill up in Minnesota. This is Minnesota up here.
Right.
And the water in the spring especially, but if the heavy rain will come through that 6-foot culvert. There's a reason there's a 6-foot culvert there, because there's a lot of water that comes through there. And it comes right down through here, and then it comes over here and it dumps into a creek. Okay. So, I guess if you're going to dig this up here, 5 foot wide, 4 foot deep.
The pipeline, the easement you're talking about.
Right.
Yeah.
This surface water is going to come rolling down here, and it's going to go this way and it's going to go this way, but it's not going to go the way that it needs to go.
So it'll go kind of east and west, but not south.
Right. Because it's going to go where the dirt's been disturbed and is loose. And that'll wash a lot of erosion there.
Okay. Did you ever talk to anybody from Summit about an alternative route for the pipeline?
No. I've surmised an alternative route, but I never talked to them about it.
Well, what would you suggest for an alternative route?
Well, to the west, of my property, the easements have been signed here and here. So
pardon me just a minute. So the two parcels to the west of your property and your son's property have, are those folks who signed easements?
Yes.
Okay.
So if you go to the one, not this one, if it could get a little wider, I don't know if they can or not, but it'd be beyond this building site by quite a ways. It'd be probably clear over here. They're going to be coming through the river about right. Okay, let's see now. Yeah, they'll be coming through the river about here, and then if they would turn and go straight north, there's no one who lives around there. Okay, I mean the closest place would be right here, but it would be probably at least a mile away. It's all pasture ground, wouldn't disturb good black dirt. There would be no tile in there. They've been promoting this pipeline project. They're very up for it. And being they don't have a permit at all for Minnesota, it would be, I would say, intelligent or smart or common sense to go through here and hook on here and just stay away from here.
You mentioned earlier that Summit proposes to put a valve on your property. Is that correct?
Yes.
What do you understand that this valve would be like? What would that entail?
Well, I guess I've seen pictures of what we think it'll look like, but they're gonna have the pipes are gonna be coming up out of the ground and into this valve, and they're not sure if they have a valve that's going to take 2,100 pounds of pressure. The other thing to make you realize that they're putting two valves within 3 miles of each other, because they're putting a valve on this side of the river and they're putting the valve here.
Which river is that, by the way?
Pardon?
Which river is that?
It's the West Fork of the Des Moines River.
Okay. And so this valve would be above ground, correct?
Yes.
And I think I saw something earlier in our proceedings that the valve would entail some structures around it and then a fence around it.
Yes.
Okay. And so that's something you'd have to farm around?
Yes.
And as best you know, where exactly on your property would that valve be located?
They want to put it right here by the road, sort of, but it's going to be 50 feet in and right here. And so this land here, it's landlocked. How are you going to get in there? Because the driveway is over here, and you come in here and you farm this.
So let me put this in words if I can. The valve would be 50 feet along the pipeline route from that curved road, correct?
Yes, about right there.
Okay. And you said that there'd be no entrance for you onto your property? Or did I misunderstand you?
What was that? I didn't quite understand.
What did you say? There would be no entrance on your property?
Right. There's no entrance on this north part here to get in off of the road. It's a ditch. There's no entryway there. So then this would be landlocked. Plus, it would be landlocked when they're putting the project in as well. To get there.
So I assume that would be a real problem in trying to farm around that valve in the middle of your land.
It would be, and it would be it would be scary because I'm not always going to be around. But at some point, my grandson's going to be farming, and my son farms with me, and you could have a hired man or a son, grandson, or whatever that forgot that was there and hit it, and it'd be disastrous. So, if it was on the alternative route, it would be out in the pasture. There's no field equipment that would even be in the pasture, I guess, working. So.
And if I recall your testimony, you didn't talk to any Summit representatives about an alternative going around to the west.
No, I did not talk to them about that. They said they couldn't move it, I guess. That is what I mean. When I talked to the land agent the first time, that's when she said, well, we can't move it. And I asked her if we could spread the payments out. I'd like a payment for the next 20 years. And she said they couldn't do that either. So.
Exhibit 601 and 639 that were just admitted concerning water trail. How do you think the pipeline would impact that water trail?
Well, the water trail is something that they've recently done for canoers and kayakers.
Is that on the river?
It's right on the river.
So it's not on your land?
No, it is not.
Okay. Okay.
It's just south of there.
All right.
But they're turning it into kind of a recreational thing, and if they put that map up, the water trail erosion map overlay, can I have that up, or am I getting out of line here?
Which exhibit would that be? 601. Yeah, let's try 601. The hearing exhibit 601.
About the 639.
Oh, 639, okay.
Okay. So my property that doesn't have the pipeline on it but has the fin on it is right here. Okay? Right here. The fin is located about right there.
Mm-hmm.
And when you look at this map, this was all done when they designed the water trail. Okay? So you explained to me why you would put a pipeline through an area. If you see the yellow here and you go down, is the key on there? Yeah. Erosion severe. Why would you try and put a pipeline through a river where it's extremely erodible? Okay. The problem that they had in Mississippi was erosion, and that's what caused the rupture.
Okay.
And then that, and putting the valve 3 miles apart, it kind of indicates to me that they're a little concerned about that.
Finally, your exhibit 653 is an Emmett County ordinance, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And do you believe that ordinance would impact the situation of the pipeline being on your property?
Yes.
Is that why you've offered that?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Whippel may have some more questions about that.
Okay.
But that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, and so just a couple quick housekeeping items since Mr. Valen has come from a long ways. Our goal is to work through the rest of the questions with Mr. Valen, and then we want to get input on what is effectively 3 motions or 2 motions and a question. Take some time to think about that, and then come back and address those. So just want to make sure we're kind of on the same page there. But right now, we're just going to try to plug through and get Mr. Valen done before what I assume would be a pretty short supper.
And I'll have some, after he's done, whenever it's appropriate, I'll have some other exhibits to offer as well. It won't take very long.
Oh, great. That's fine. Thanks. All right, Mr. Whippel.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Valen, I represent Emmett County and a few other counties. If we could just pull up the hearing exhibit that Mr. Taylor just mentioned, I think it'd be useful for you to explain what you're depicting on that a little bit more for the record. Mr. Taylor indicated that it's a Emmett County zoning ordinance, but it appears to just be a bit of a passage that's been lifted from the zoning ordinance. And then have you prepared some images from the Google Maps Here.
Yes, I think isn't that what this is? Can they roll it?
Yeah. Well, maybe you could explain to me what you're depicting here.
Well-
Narrate it for the record.
Yeah, well, it needs to go further a distance. It's going the wrong way because Gordon Garrison is way south of our thing, but I tried to measure how far away the pipeline would be from buildings and whatever, which when I first came today, you were doing that. You could tell with the map of how, measuring it. Okay, and so that's what we tried to do there, but is there more to this map, or is this it?
I believe it's 3 pages, this exhibit.
Oh, okay, it's sheets. Okay, all right. Yeah, so News Action Pork is a big hog confinement, and when you see the footage there, 644, that's going to be a problem of Emmett County because if it's 1,000 foot from any structure, that's not going to work.
So let me just stop you there for a minute. You're
Yep.
referring to the 1,000-foot setback that Emmett County's adopted in its local zoning ordinance.
Yes,
And what you are doing here is measuring those distances in order to hold them up against the requirements that the county's passed.
right,
Okay.
correct.
So is there anything else you want to say about the exhibit that you prepared? Okay.
I mean, you understand what it means, correct? I mean,
Yep. I just wanted you to say it so we could have it in the record. 'Cause
sure. Okay,
it's
all
not-
right, got you.
Not entirely clear from the pictures there what the reason you've highlighted those distances and why you chose those structures. So I think we got that in the record now. Were you here earlier when I asked your son a few questions about the same ordinance?
Yes.
And would you agree with the answers that he provided in terms of, do you recall those questions? Did you disagree with any answer that he gave about the Emmett County ordinance?
No.
Is there anything else that you would want to add about the Emmett County ordinance that
Well,
I
I
didn't
guess-
ask him?
I guess the only thing I would add is now that there's more light after, I guess, this plume that they tested, that it may not be far enough. If, now that we have that information, because I think that ordinance was put in quite a while ago before we had that information. But I guess I agree with 1,000 foot. But depending on pipe size, so.
So your testimony is you'd actually prefer to see the Emmett County supervisors adopt a greater setback distance.
Yes.
Do you have an idea what your idea of a good setback distance would be?
Well, it's kind of hard to say because Summit hasn't for sure told you what size of pipe they're going to put through. And if they're going to have larger pipe, it's going to need more setback. So, I guess I don't have a number.
Do you know what the size of the pipe is that's going through your property?
Well, it started out as 6, but the last I heard it was 8. So, but it could be 24. It sounds like. So, I guess it's 8. I guess for now.
Well, unless you have anything to add about that zoning exhibit, that's all I have for you, sir.
Okay.
Ms. Hike?
Hello, Mr. Vaughn. Over here, I'm Chris Hike. I'm a landowner.
Okay.
I recall with your son's testimony, there was a lawsuit involved on a parcel of his. Was there a lawsuit involved in this one as well?
Yeah, I'll explain that a little better. Earlier in this situation, I guess, in 22, I wasn't home, but a white van pulls into my yard, comes up, knocks on the door. My wife was home, but the van has no markings on it. She didn't recognize who it was. She did not go to the door. Well, then he proceeded to get back in his van, drove out to the middle of my driveway, and started digging a hole. Well, my wife called my son, and he came, and what he was doing was, and I don't know if everybody's aware of it, but in Iowa, they put pegs down in the corner of sections for surveying. So there's pegs in every section, okay? Well, anyway, this is where I live, not where the pipeline is, okay? So my son asked him what he was doing, and he said that he didn't identify with the pipeline company, first of all, but he said that they couldn't find the peg in the other section up further, so they were going to measure off of this one because then they could find it. So they dug down and found the peg, which was on private property because the road's been changed and I own that property now. I guess it just assumed to me that, you assumed nobody was home, so you're just going to go ahead and do it anyway. And the pat answer I think they were told to say if they got caught was, well, I can leave if you want. That's like having a thief in your house, taking your valuables, and you catch them, and they say, well, I can leave if you want, right? Anyway, so fast forward, probably, 2 to 3 weeks later, I get a call that there's a strange pickup parked in my driveway up where the pipeline's going to go through, and a neighbor called me, and so I went up to investigate, and I found a gray pickup with tinted windows so dark you couldn't see if anybody was in there, which, by the way, is illegal in Iowa. But anyway, Utah license plate. So I drove up beside him. He put the window down, and I said, "Are you with the pipeline company? Are you surveying?" No, sir. No. And he drove away. Well, he drove about a mile, parked over a mile away. Well, he doesn't realize that I own that section too, so anyway, in the meantime, somebody comes walking across property, not my property, but the neighbor's property, with a vest on, and he obviously was surveying. And so I just asked him when he climbed across the fence if he had permission to be here. And he pulled out a sheet of paper with the code saying that pipeline people, kind of half of the code, not the whole code, that pipeline people are allowed to go survey without telling anybody about it. But then he did ask me, whose property is this? So if you have a surveyor who's asking you whose property it is, how did you know he had permission to be there? Okay. In the meantime, this gray pickup comes rolling up that said he wasn't with the pipeline to pick him up. So that's what we've been dealing with here with these surveyors. They're like thieves in the night. They don't put marking on that that's where they are. They don't notify you 10 days in advance. They don't tell you, what if they walk on my property and I had sprayed some chemical on there, and they walked across it, which is a withdrawal. You can't go on the field within, so many hours after being sprayed. No, I'm liable. So anyway, that was the experience. Well then, like my son said, Christmas Monday, guy rolls in, knocks on the door, house full of company, of course, it's Christmas, hands me a paper and says, "You've been served. The pipeline company's suing you. Merry Christmas." So now I got a lawsuit because I wouldn't let them survey. Anyway, so fast forward probably, that was Christmas, I would say maybe March. I finally get a voicemail on my phone that indicates that if you would sign an easement, they would drop the lawsuit. Okay. Which I didn't respond to. And then, as my son said, a couple weeks before the trial date, they decided to drop it. So they dropped the lawsuit. So you can read into that whatever you want. I'm not going to say, but I know I have a pretty good idea what that was about. So.
Has this process caused a burden on you?
Yes, well, when you're being sued by a large corporation, it's a little stressful. A little stressful. And you're in wonderment or whatever, am I right, or do I have a case, or what do I do? But I was able to find an attorney, and they took care of it, or as far as what we needed to do, and then I just got a call saying that they're dropping the lawsuit. So that was the lawsuit story.
Do you believe the proposed project is a public convenience and necessity, and does it benefit the public?
No, I can't see how it's benefiting the public. It's kind of a money grab, and sad to say we got politicians going along with it and trampling property rights. And if they're permitted to do this, what's next? I mean, what's next? There's going to be all kinds of companies coming in and citing their permit, saying that, well, you did it there, so we can do it too. And that's a really slippery slope to get on.
Thank you, sir.
Ms. Colas?
I just have a couple of questions. Jean Colas, also a landowner. You mentioned that they had two easements, and one included a valve installation above ground with aperture structures and a road and that kind of thing, correct?
Yes.
Do you have concern about having, you also mentioned being aware of the Sartasia incident and the rupture.
What was that last part?
The Sartasia incident where it ruptured? You
Yes.
were familiar with that? I question, are you familiar with another incident in Sartasia in October of that same year, where when they attempted to do maintenance on that line, that they opened a valve because they had to release some of the CO2 gas, and the valve struck open?
Objection.
Ms. Colas is providing facts, not in evidence. If she wants to ask the witness if he is aware of that and see if he has any knowledge, that's fine, but she can't put all the information in if the witness doesn't independently know it.
Ms. Colas, do you have a response?
I will redirect that question. Are you aware of an incident in October of 2020 on the same Sartasia pipeline that there was an incident when they attempted? Are you aware of that?
Yes, I think I read something about the fact that they couldn't get the valve to turn back on after the rupture.
They couldn't turn it off, so it was frozen open. I think it's
okay.
Do you have concern that a valve is located on your property, and if they needed to do maintenance on that line, that same incident could happen on your property?
Well, yeah, it's concerning that the CO2, from what I've been able to read, is corrosive and hard on things, and I don't know that they have the valve perfected enough to, that it would be reliable, I guess.
Are you also familiar that rupture ended up going for over 24 hours before it was emptied, the pipeline?
Right.
Do you have concern with the location of the population around your pipeline, the risk and the hazard that it would be to people and also to animals and wild? Right.
Well, with the cattle that we have, my family's there. I mean, I have 700 acres there in the area. Okay, so you're going to be there a lot. The grain setup is there. The family's going to be there. the livestock's going to be there. It's quite a concern. It worries me a lot.
Thank you. No further questions.
Okay, Mr. Dubinsky?
I got you. You're on my list.
Mr. Dubinsky?
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Valen, a handful of follow-up questions here. First of all, can we put the KMZ back up? And this is just entirely for clarification. You were talking about the fen earlier, and I am not sure exactly where that is. Can you show us where the fen is?
We have to get wider.
See, if we have to zoom out a bit, we can.
Yeah, if we go back and kind of show the river there. There you go. Okay. To get my bearings here. I don't put fence lines in there, so it makes it a little harder to sure. Okay, that's there. Okay. The fin is going to be about right in here.
So again, because we won't have the visual up necessarily with the transcript, I just want to describe and see if we can agree on this. So if you go to the southwest of your Exhibit H parcel towards the river, just before you get to the wooded area before the river, there is a darker green rectangular shape with a little extra off to the northwest. And it has a small notch about halfway along the northern border of that dark green rectangle. And you're saying the fen is approximately where that notch is. Is that fair?
No.
Okay.
Now that you mentioned it, it's coming to me now because this is a 14.9 acre field.
Okay.
That is farmed. And so the fen is going to be right here.
Okay, so
right in here.
So the fen is
the 3 trees there, and the fen is it's right there.
Okay, so that below the rectangle I was describing,
yes,
there are 3 trees.
Yes.
And the fen is between the 3 trees and the southern border of that rectangle.
Yes.
Okay. Can we zoom back out just a little bit? So to be clear, the Exhibit H parcel that's in red, that is all farmed.
Yes, it is.
Okay. And you said that a different owner that has signed a voluntary easement owns the property due west of the Exhibit H parcel, correct?
Yes.
And then what else do you or your family own then?
Okay. Of course, where the fen is here.
Sure.
Okay. This is my property line right here. Okay. And I actually have 7 acres on this side of the river. Well, actually, it's here. Okay. So my property line would be right here, straight from that triangle field right there, and this is pasture.
Okay.
Okay. And so it's 240. It's 240 acres.
Okay. And so you have land that is non-contiguous there. You have other owners between those farms. Okay.
Yeah,
that's right.
They're just one. Yeah. There's if you go, see right here, that's a different owner here, and when you go here, that's a different owner.
Okay. So
it's 3 owners coming to a point basically there.
Okay. And do you have, I assume because there's no eminent domain parcels, that your land does not run down in the southern area to where the proposed pipeline route is. So there at the river,
Mm-hmm.
the pipeline isn't crossing your land.
Right.
Okay.
But when you get, no, it isn't. But when you get to this point right here, it's very close. Very close.
Okay.
And of course, the river is a low valley anyway. I mean, so if any CO2 decides to leave, it's not going to stop at the fence line, I don't believe.
Switching, well, actually, I guess this is somewhat relevant to the river. You were talking about the erodibility at the river. Are you aware that there will be a horizontal drill under the river that will be 25 feet below the riverbed?
Yes.
Okay.
I heard 30, but anyway.
Yeah, it will be at least 25. You had expressed some concern about access to the northern portion of your property. Are you aware that Summit will either put in periodic trench plugs or other temporary access to make sure that you can get from one side of the construction area to the other at all times?
Well, I guess they could do that, but I guess take an example of putting a 3-foot wall through the center of your house, and then, you're in the living room and you decide you need to go to the kitchen for a sandwich. You can go outside the door and you can go around the outside of the house and you can come back in. With the big equipment that we have now or whatever, it's a major deal. It isn't like a little 4-wheel that you can jump on the road and drive up there. You got to fold it up. It just would be, a real inconvenience.
Am I correct that you have an existing pipeline on that property?
Yes, there's a natural gas pipeline.
That was my next question. Do you know what type of pipeline that is? And that, just for the record, starting on the west edge of your property, that prior to the bend in the proposed Summit pipeline, that would run roughly parallel but somewhat northwest, correct?
Northeast, wouldn't it be? Or am I? If they put up, I don't know if they can they put up my tile map, maybe?
Or if you know where it is and can
It
you show it
shows
with a pointer.
it shows the natural gas pipeline on that, but
Okay. Mr. Jorde, do you happen to know what exhibit that is?
I'll look for it here.
okay, that's Matt's. Is there a different one, maybe?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Let's just go back to the.
I think I have one here.
Yeah, let's go back to the KMZ for a moment. Yeah. So, what I'm suggesting, Mr. Valen, is that it runs parallel to the Summit pipeline there at the western part of your property, correct?
This is above ground. This is in Minnesota, but this is for the pipeline right here.
Okay.
Okay. And it's going to come, and it goes right here. It just misses this wetland right here.
Okay. So it runs.
So
Just-
it's within 90 feet of these two pipelines here, because I measured it, and that's quite a concern, because there's a problem with one, there's going to be a problem with both. With two of them together, I haven't been able to find any information with pipelines that close together.
And then the last question I have, you had talked about, you provided an exhibit related to the Emmett County ordinance. You're aware that a federal court in the Southern District of Iowa has enjoined a similar ordinance in Shelby County, correct?
Okay, I'm not sure I was aware of that, but I think Shelby County has done some things like that.
Okay. I don't have anything further, Your Honor. Thank you.
Ms. Kaufman, I did not see your card up before I called on Mr. Dublinski. Did I miss you before Mr. Dublinski started?
No, can I not say anything now? I didn't realize that.
Yeah, that's kind of what we've established
Okay,
over the
I'm
last
sorry.
8 weeks, but
Sorry, I haven't
Mr.
been here
Dublinsky's
as often
saying he
as I'd like.
doesn't care. Go ahead and ask your question.
Thank you, Mr. Dublinsky. Mr. Valen, I just had a question about your pre-file testimony about, in addition to the fin, which I find to be quite interesting as a, I didn't even know what a fin was, but it seems like it's a very rare thing. And also, it says in your pre-file testimony that they also found mammoth remains just south of Dennis's property, your son's property. And I'm curious, do you have any idea why they want to come anywhere near these things when they really wouldn't have to if it's coming from, as I understand it, connecting 3 ethanol plants in Nebraska with a non-existent pipeline in Minnesota, why they couldn't, do you have any idea why they want to come through that way, that part of Iowa?
No, I do not know. I mean, they're bringing CO2. It's coming down. It's not going out. It's coming down from the Green Plains ethanol plant in Fairmont, Minnesota, is the one they've signed up.
Okay.
And it's coming down. And it's a little hard for me to understand why we're coming back into Iowa when you supposedly are going to North Dakota. That would be like going to California and I'll go through Illinois. Why would you do that? I have an idea why they want to do it that way, but I'm not going to say.
That was my only question. Thank you.
All right. I have to say, Mr. Dublinsky kind of beat me to some of these questions because I had noticed the facility on the north side of your property up there in Minnesota. So I was wondering if there's a pipeline nearby. So the question I don't know if we clarified, do you know who owns that pipeline?
Yeah, it's Northern Natural Gas out of Omaha.
Okay.
American company.
And
then they've been, go ahead.
I was going to say, and then when were you property owner when that got put in? Were you around during that time?
No,
I have no idea.
When we bought the property, it was there already.
It was.
It was put in 1939.
So when you bought the property, you knew that it was there then?
In 2009, correct.
And I just have to ask, because we've heard this question a lot during this whole hearing, did that pipeline make you not want to buy it, or do you think you paid less for it because it was there?
Well, the problem with that is that you can't compare the natural gas pipeline to the CO2 pipeline, simply because the natural gas pipeline is under about 800 pounds of pressure. It's 16 inch, it's 54 inches deep. And if there is a problem there, it's lighter than air. It will go up into the air. I will also say, man, it smells like rotten eggs. Okay. We did have 2 years ago, we had an incident where you could smell rotten eggs pretty heavy. Okay. And we called the gas company right away, and they were there really quick. And turns out they have a valve, a mechanism that injects the smell, the rotten egg smell. And what had happened, it had malfunctioned, and that's why we were smelling it. So it wasn't really leaking gas, but it was this thing that wasn't working correctly. But with the CO2, with pretty much 3 times as much pressure, and it sounds like they're a little bit wondersome on the integrity of the pipe, if it will be able to hold that 365 days a year for years, that it, I won't be able to, I just won't be able to breathe if there's a rupture. And I'll have no real warning because you can't see it and you can't smell it. I've heard that someone requested they put a smell into it, and they denied that they didn't want to do that. So I'm not sure why, but they didn't want to do that. So they did between the pressure and not being warned about the CO2. you can't make a comparison between the two. So I guess the natural gas pipeline doesn't really scare me. The CO2 really scares me.
So the fen, just out of curiosity, so do you pasture that fen as well? Is it more, or just you keep cattle off of it? Period.
No, the cattle will run around it, but they don't go in it because it's. I don't know if you've ever been on one, but you could stand 20 feet from me, and I'll jump up and down, and you'll move. I mean, it's really fragile. It's just like Jello.
Yep.
Okay, so the cattle, they'll walk around it, but they won't go through it.
Do you, and you made a statement earlier that you worry about the pipeline could potentially disrupt the flow of water to that fen, which is accurate. Do you also worry about tiling around the fen, that it could disrupt the fen?
Well, there's no tile around there because most of it's pasture, so there's no tile, and the tile aren't 30 feet deep, and a crevice maybe like this, and not like that. More dirt will be moved and more excavating will be done than a tile line would have. But there is no tile around the fen on our property, and there isn't any to the north of me either, because that's owned by a couple of bachelors, and they haven't put any tile in there that I'm aware of. So,
and then just the last question. So when your son was up here earlier today, he was talking about the lawsuit and how you guys had that lawsuit, or you'd been served. So were both of your names on that together, or were you served independently of each other?
We were served independently.
Okay. And I think those are all my questions for you, so thank you.
Mr. Jorde on redirect.
Yes, thank you. If we could pull up Mr. Valen's pre-filed testimony, page 337, please. All right, so during all of those questions, I was able to locate this. This is the map where you have depicted your tile lines over a summit map they provided you, and then you've also roughed in the county tile line, the main, as well as the northern natural gas line. Is that correct?
Yes. Yep.
And just again, so the record's clear, the vertical black kind of thinner lines. There's a couple green ones. Those are those your? And I'm sorry, the black vertical lines are your tile lines, correct?
Yes.
And all of them stop short of the northern natural gas pipeline. They are south of that, correct?
That's because they don't want you to go over the pipeline, and we didn't want to go over the pipeline, so that's why. There's some tile on the other side of the pipeline that I guess I never drew in, but we went parallel with it. Because if you get within 25 feet of the pipeline, the gas company man's got to be standing right there. Okay, so we know where the pipeline is. We're not going over it. It's too dangerous. No matter, it's just not going to happen. So that's why we tiled on both sides, and we were lucky enough that this big main had already been installed there through the pipeline. So we were able to plug into it with the tile that we, Anyway.
Very good. But then the proposed summit pipeline, if it were to go through, would cut through every single one, or at least affect every single one of those lines.
Yes. Yes.
All right. Okay, and then the northern natural gas line, that was pre-existing, and you were able to work around it essentially.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Very good. I think that's all we needed for that. If we could go back to the KMZ, please. And then zoom out if you would. Thank you, that's perfect. You were asked some questions about an alternative reroute, and again, you were saying there and here, and so I just want to be clear. From your parcels, if we go southwest on a diagonal, we get to the Des Moines River, is that correct?
Yes,
On the proposed pipeline. And is it your proposed alternative route that approximately near where Summit proposes to cross the Des Moines River from the south, that instead of going diagonally to your property, which would be to the northeast from the Des Moines River, you would propose it go due north,
yes,
which is approximately 1.25 miles or so from your property?
yes,
All right. And your testimony was then that would avoid, obviously, your land, your son's land, and would be on pasture ground and the furthest away from any structures or residences, correct?
right. It would be close here, but you know, you're right on the mile and whatever here, but it still would be very close to my other property, I guess, as far as where the cattle are, I guess is what I'm saying.
Sure, understood, but technically it would avoid your property, and the point being it would be in a more remote area away from other existing structure and infrastructure.
Yes.
All right. On the survey piece, of course, you were sued, your son was sued, they served you on Christmas, and then you said that they told you, well, hey, we'll drop this lawsuit if you sign an easement. Was that kind of an intimidation tactic, you believe?
I guess you could call it that, or blackmail.
Okay. And then again, the surveyor was on your property without any permission, and then I think you had said that the person who told you he wasn't with a surveying later comes by and picks that surveyor up. But I mean, with Summit and their agents acting like that, would you agree they're just simply lying to you?
Yes.
And then through this process, they want to take from you something that is yours and you don't want to give them. Does that go along with that thief analogy you were talking about?
Yes.
So what we have here are liars and thieves. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
Thank you. I don't have anything further.
You needed to clean up some evidence, correct?
I do. I'm not resting my case. I just didn't have anything further with this. I don't need this witness to put the evidence in. So whenever you prefer.
Okay, hold on. Gotcha. All right, you're dismissed. Thank you.
Dismissed.
Appreciate it.
Okay.
Mr. Jorde, I thought you had some things that you needed to admit into evidence.
Yep, I do. I just didn't know what the procedure was, but I'm happy to do it now.
You said it wouldn't take long, so let's just take care of that.
Okay, yep. And the preamble being, there were some exhibits that previously Mr. Dublinsky and I had stipulated to the witness's testimony coming in. I looked over my notes over our break, and it appears that I might have missed them. And then Mr. Dublinsky and I have reached a stipulation in regard to the witness, Michael White, that couldn't be here yesterday. So perhaps I'll start with Mr. White. We would offer Exhibit 72, which is Michael White's pre-file testimony.
No objection. Admitted. Since it sounds like we're probably on the same page here, if you want to go through everything, is that all right?
Whatever you prefer.
Is that all right with you, Mr. Dublinsky?
It is. Mr. Jorde and I have worked through this in advance, so this, whatever is easiest for the board.
Yeah. Then I only have to say admit once.